a transcendent aspect of art that allows us to break our separateness from others, and it reveals our deep connections with other people. Artists, in other words, were really high status figures in ancient Irish society. Colonial expansion took hold. These conquests have been termed colonial capitalism because the Crown used private armies, known as adventurers, to fight the war against the Irish. Payment would be made when the war was over and would be in the form of land granted to them, which had previously been owned by Irish Catholics, who were now dispossessed. And at the end of that campaign came the Down Survey. So the armies of the English Commonwealth, led by Oliver Cromwell, undertook this huge social engineering project, which was all about a massive transfer of land ownership from Irish Catholics to English Protestants. And for this to happen, all of that land which was going to be transferred had to be accurately surveyed and mapped. And this was what the Down Survey was all about. So the work in this show is a reaction to these events in our history, both the carving up of land and its redistribution, but also to the change in the status of art and artists in Ireland. And this work is about uncertain futures. It's about going on anyway, even when the future is uncertain, when you have to say goodbye to the past, when you have to walk that trail into the unknown without any certainty for where it's going to lead you or whether it's going to give you what you want. It's about land, it's about land ownership and all the echoes of today's society as well. This idea that we're becoming a landlord culture again, and people don't know where they're going to live or how they're going to be able to pay the rent, and it takes away all certainty from you, because if you don't know where you're going to live, you don't know anything. And the work here, it's not about, these aren't actual specific landscapes, they're abstract paintings, but they do owe something to the land. I began looking at this Down Survey and how this was the time when an awful lot of Irish land got transferred over. Land got carved up like an asset. It became something that was taken and appropriated from people and given to someone else. And imagine what that does to a society, the way it just tears it apart. You're born in a place and you own maybe 100 acres, and now you own nothing. And you're just left to wander. We see these horizontal lines like furrows in the ground. They could be potato drills or turf bogs scarred from digging, remote mountain lands spreading out into the distance away from the roads, or roads carved through a landscape or superimposed on it. And we think of these travellers, these travelling harpers, poets, wanderers, poorer now than their grandparents were, relying on the favours of landowners who themselves are running out of time, as this relentless march of progress makes useless all the things that they'd held dear. New value systems come about. And I began using these linear themes, these horizontal lines, writing, thinking about harpers who weren't able to read or write anymore, a linear counterpoint, a road, a lonely road across a bleak landscape, a country ravaged by forced famines and appropriated lands. As Owen Roe O'Neill said, a place that looked not only like a desert but like hell, if hell could exist on earth. It's also about how straight lines and colonialism go hand in hand, how poor people can't use the technology that the colonialists can, and therefore they're at a disadvantage. How the line is imposed upon the landscape, and how the crooked line of the land can overcome the straight line of the planner, the surveyor, etc. It was in this climate that these last harbours existed. The Gaelic order had fallen and there were no more great houses houses to act as patrons for harp music. A way of life was fast disappearing. Musical laments were written, cua in Irish, and this all in this work becomes a metaphor for the fragility of culture, how easily it is broken. And yet, in Irish culture, there's a resistance. There's a tender and fragile going against the grain, going against what was happening. And despite the relentless grinding out of a new pathway, there's a sense that underneath everything there's a richer and deeper seam or a pool that can't be fathomed, and it's running through everything. And that's the gift that keeps on giving, and that's what Gaelic culture turned out to be. And somehow these people, somehow in their weakness, they were able to still go back to that common pool of literature and language and music, and not only draw from it but replenish it with new music and new language, new poetry. And that's where that fragile line is appearing in the work. That's what that's about. It's not superimposed, but it's revealed as being there all the time, and a way of carrying on regardless of these intentional ideas, running on anyway, because it has to. And it's about this redemptive force in all nature, and that's what our Irish culture was able to tap into in order to help it sustain itself.